Now, we've spoken to many people. This was started by Tim Hansen. Many people who have been booked, they believe wrongly, Western Ring Road, Keilor East, northbound Keilor Park Drive Bridge in what was said to be a 40 zone. And no 40 zone signs there, they say. We got many people saying this. On the line from Road Policing Enforcement, Superintendent Dean McWhirter. Good morning.
Good morning, Neil. How are you?
I'm well, thank you. You think they're legitimate tickets?
Yes, they are.
Why?
Well, look, probably just to put it in a little bit of context. On the 30th, in relation to when Mr. Hansen rang you, the road signs were changed to 40 between 12 p.m. and 1:30 p.m. And what happens when the illuminated signs do change, there's a 5-minute grace period before the actual road safety cameras activate and then start detecting and infringing. So there is a grace period that's applied. And I've looked at several of the images already as quick as we could in the short time we've had to look at these things.
Yeah.
And on both sides of the road we've got illuminated signs at 40. We've got roadworks on the inner lane, if you like, of Western Ring Road, and we've got bollards and we've got arrows directing traffic. And unfortunately, people have missed the signs. I'm not quite sure how. They're quite clear, and accordingly, they've been detected in excess of the speed limit.
So you're saying the signs were definitely changed for what period of time?
Between 12 p.m. and 1:30 p.m. on the 30th. And
what tickets have you seen? What time were they issued?
So, so you've got a 5-minute grace period when the cameras are activated when the signs have changed. So you've got a 5-minute grace period, as I said. And so what you've got in that 1.5 hour time period, there's been 991 infringements issued. And unfortunately, and this is where people's observations come into it in terms of their driving environment, 269 of those were in excessive speed incidents, which means they were driving in excess of 25 kilometres over the speed.
So that's their licence gone?
That's their licence gone.
991 in 90 minutes. What would how many would you normally get there?
Well, it depends on the speed zone, as I'm aware, was for a long time 80 kilometres an hour, and now it's up to 100. And because of the ongoing roadworks, those illuminated signs have changed in terms of what's going on the road, as it was on this occasion. And
well, say a week previously, between midday and 1:30, how many would you have booked?
I couldn't do that analysis for you that quickly. But as a general rule, we were seeing figures of 500 or more. In periods when the signs are changed. Or
sorry, what does that mean? 500 in how long?
Well, depending on how long the road signs change.
But what I'm getting at is in a normal day with the normal speed signs, how many would you book in an hour and a half?
Again, I can't give you that analysis.
It's pretty relevant, isn't it? Because if it's 100 or 50, then there's something clearly wrong.
Well, what unfortunately is that drivers have to drive to the posted speed limit, and the speed limit signs are very, very clear. They're illuminated for that purpose, so for drivers to be aware of what the change in the speed zones are. But wouldn't you have to drive to that limit?
Yeah, I understand that, but wouldn't you agree it's unusual for almost 1,000 people in an hour and a half to miss the signs?
Well, I think what that really indicates that people aren't observant about speed signs.
1,000 in an hour and a half?
Yeah, it's a real shame. And so if I could put that... Look, well, Neil,
I'm sorry, I'm suspicious still.
Can I put it in context?
Yeah.
The cameras were activated in April last year, and what we did is, as we do now, is we ran a test period for a month. And in that month, we had 1,253 motorists detected in excessive speed.
In a month?
In a month.
1,253, and here you've got 1,000 in an hour and a half.
No, wrong information. No, so that was 1,253 in terms of an excessive speed. So that was 25 k's or more in that month leading.
So how many totally booked?
There were no. This is just in the test period. So we had nearly 25,000 people who actually were breaching the speed limit prior to the cameras being activated.
In how long?
In a month period. And so then when we turned the signs back on, that's when we activated the cameras. What happened was we retested.
But that's still, I mean, if you've got 25,000, that's about 6,000 a day.
Yep.
We're still talking of 1,000 in an hour and a bit.
Yeah, well, that just shows you the limit of drivers who aren't actually aware of their road environment and not looking at signs, and that creates risk. And the real risk here is that the roadworks were being operated at that time. It's all about the safety of the people who are actually doing that roadwork.
Oh, yeah. Look,
unfortunately, people who are driving at high speeds are actually placing those people...
Oh, but these people aren't driving at high speeds. They're 50s and 60s.
Well, in high speeds, in terms of the speed limit at the time, which is there to protect the workers who are working on the road, and that's quite reasonable. Because
Okay.
I don't think any of us would like to be put at risk on the roads.
Apart from the illuminated signs, are any others up
As far as I'm aware, there was pre-signage before the change in the speed zone,
saying 40 zone ahead?
saying the change in speed limit. As far as I'm aware.
Do you find it surprising that we've now probably got scores of people booked at this time in this area who didn't see the signs? Do you find? I mean, the drivers aren't that bad.
I don't find it surprising.
1,000 people in an hour and a half, and you normally get, what was it? What did I say? It was 6,000 a day.
Yeah, no, it's not surprising because unfortunately, as you said, I think I haven't listened to all your calls, but some of them said, look, I didn't see the speed signs were not at 40. I never saw them. I think that's a real indication that people aren't observant on the roads, and that is an indication of really risk in terms of how they're driving.
Well, of course it is, if that's the case. But I'm sorry to sort of go on about it, but these are people who have never had tickets before. These are people who drive. I'm sorry.
Some may not have. Yes, that's right.
Yeah, some. These are people who are genuinely convinced they didn't see signs.
Yep.
I look at the figures and say you've got almost 1,000 in an hour and a half when you'd get a fraction of that on a normal day, and say, well, all right, is that because nobody saw the signs? If you were to set up this sort of operation somewhere else, with plenty of signs, would you expect to get 1,000 people speeding through in an hour and a half?
Unfortunately, in terms of the Western Ring Road, that's the case when the change of speed signs. People don't look at them. People don't see them. Okay. They don't observe them.
Well, maybe you need more signs or bigger signs or something.
I don't think that's the case. They're illuminated. There's plenty of signs out there, and as I said, if there's pre-signage warning the change in speed limit, it's up to drivers to be aware of their environment.
But out of these 1,000 people, there might be a handful of hoons, but the vast majority are going to be decent drivers and law-abiding people trying to do the right thing. So that raises in my question, if the signs were all there, whether the signs are adequate.
Well,
they're not all hoons. We haven't got 1,000 hoons.
And I'm not suggesting that at all. What I'm saying is that the signs, the adequate signs there in terms of illumination, my understanding is they're pre-signage as well, and people aren't just noticing those, recognising it and having to change. And particularly when it's quite clear from the images I've seen so far, quite clearly there's roadworks. Now, on any person's normal driving, if there's an obstruction on the road, you would slow down naturally anyway. Plus, you've got the advantage of the illuminated signs, which are quite clear. So there's a couple of things that can occur. Those people that have received infringements over this time period have got a couple of options if they're unsure about whether those illuminated signs are relating to them. They can actually come into Civic Compliance in William Street and actually have a look at their actual images. That's the first thing. Second thing is they can write into Civic Compliance and we will then assess their circumstances on an individual case-by-case basis. And if they're entitled to an official warning under the criteria, we can avail them of that. As you say, people going about their business who are not hoons and have received an infringement, okay. and it's a warning. There's an opportunity there for some discretion in the process. How
long did the roadworks go on for?
Well, the speed change was for that hour and a half period.
And how long were the roadworks going on for?
Well, I can't tell you. That's a question for Vic Roads.
Well, they told us they started on the 28th.
I can say to you that there were a change in speed sign on the 28th. That's correct. Okay,
and when was the camera changed back to the normal?
So what happens is when they've finished their roadworks and the signs are changed after that hour and a half period. So there's a 5-minute grace period. And so if it goes back to 100, there would be another 5-minute grace period and nobody would be infringed.
And how is that changed?
That's changed when the illuminated signs are changed by Vic Roads when they've completed their works.
Okay, and what, do they flick a switch or they go out and do it, or how do they change the cameras?
I'm not a technical person, you'd have to ask...
okay, so who changes the camera?
The camera reacts to the change in they're connected, and they change in response to the change in the illuminated signs.
You've booked 1,000 people near enough in an hour and a half. How many cars went through?
Good question. I've asked that question, and it's very difficult to get that data that quickly, so unfortunately I can't give that to you.
That might be interesting, mightn't it? See what percentage, if you've got 90% of cars booked, you've certainly got a problem.
Look, Neil, in terms of the general road safety camera program, drivers generally drive very, very well on our roads. So we've got a detection rate of we check 700 million vehicles annually across the network, and we have a percentage rate in terms of fixed cameras of drivers obeying the speed limit at 99.97%.
So on those
that
figures,
transgress are very small.
On these figures, you've got 90,000 cars going through in an hour and a half. If they're running true to booking, 99.97, and I'm being generous, you've got 90,000 cars going through in an hour and a half.
Look, you have to ask Vic Roads in terms of the level of traffic.
Oh, you haven't had 90,000 cars in an hour and a half, have you?
Look, I can't tell you that. We could do that calculation. I just can't do it that quickly for you.
No, fair enough. I just think it's worth doing it because it could tell us a lot. And I don't doubt that, what you're checking and everything. But if we've got 1,000 booked in that time, seems amazing to me. And if that, as a percentage of the number of cars that went through, is unusually high, then there could be an issue. Whatever it is, there could be an issue.
The issue is really about driver attentiveness, and that's our risk. And we can demonstrate that. We can demonstrate that from when we turned them on in Western Ring Road last year.
But maybe you can demonstrate that if you can show us how many of the people who went through that day and that hour and a half were booked.
Oh, certainly, but I can't do that calculation that quickly. Yeah, no, and then when I look at a couple of images here, there's quite a lot of traffic going through that location.
Yeah, but it wouldn't be 90,000, would it?
No, it wouldn't be 90,000.
Thank you. I appreciate your time. Thank you very much. Superintendent Dean McWhirter, Road Policing Enforcement.